My name is Chad Johnson from SADA. I'm with Scott Lawson from QAD, and we're here to talk to you about cloud search today. SADA, for those of you that are not familiar with us, we are a full suite Google Cloud provider. We were founded in the year 2000, and we have been a multi-year recipient of Partner of the Year from Google Cloud. As a matter of fact, we were the Global Partner of the Year for this year. Within SADA, I run a practice that focuses on enterprise search. For about 10 years, I've been working with Google's search appliance. If any of you are familiar with the yellow search appliance that Google used to sell. About 2 years ago, they introduced Google Cloud Search, and it came out as part of G Suite. It provides search across Google Docs, Google Drive, Google Mail, Calendar, etc. And about 2 years ago, we started working in a private beta with Google to allow customers to index non-Google content as well. So it was starting to fill the space of true enterprise search. Within that practice, I have consultants that do implementations. As a matter of fact, Scott is one of our customers that I've been working with for 14 years, I think. Yeah. Scott and I have worked, I've been at 3 different companies and have done work for QAD, and started with some content management projects, and then search, and now cloud search. Scott's going to take us through a little bit of a story that describes how their journey to true total enterprise search has gone. It's gone a little to the left and a little to the right at times, so Scott will take us through that story.
Okay, thank you. Right. Thank you, Chad. So I'm going to go back here. So I'm the Director of Enterprise Architecture at QAD, and I'll tell you a little bit about QAD, but we called our session One Search to Rule Them All, based on the Middle-earth legends of Tolkien. So you'll see some references to that as we go here. So QAD is a software company for manufacturers. We make ERP, supply chain, transportation, logistics type software for manufacturers in multiple verticals. So we're a 40-year-old company today, so a little bit prior to the cloud. We were listed on NASDAQ a little while later. We have a couple thousand employees, a bunch of offices. We do 7 complete solution sets in 6 industries like automotive, medical, consumer packaged goods, and so forth. And we have a lot of software. We can translate it into a lot of languages. We have almost 500,000 customers or users in 100 different companies. And so we are complex. We're confused. We have a lot of stuff for a long time. And we're also a learning company. So we really want people to know, to be able to find all this information. Because as an information company, that's what we sell. That's our product. Our people, our factory. And we've been with Google Cloud, or G Suite as it's called today, and with the GSA, the Google Search Appliance, for about 9 years or so. So this journey I want to take you on through our search, trying to find one search to rule them all. So that is, everybody loves Google, right? It's like you have a single box, you type something in, boom, the results show up. You don't have to worry about going here and there and there and there to find your stuff. You just go to Google. It's a verb, right? We're just Google it. Well, for this journey with Chad and now with SADA, we're trying to get to that place for our enterprise content. So this is the history of search at QAD. In the first scary dark ages, we had systems. They had their own search, and we searched through the things. In 2002, we implemented an enterprise system called Autonomy. It's a search engine, and it's lovely. It was purpose-built. This is prior to Google. And we started to expand Autonomy further and further through 2005. The problem with Autonomy was it got really complex. It got really hard to deal with. It got really hard to pay the bill for that thing. So then in 2010, Google came along with the beautiful yellow box. Who has a GSA in the audience? A couple of you, that beautiful yellow box. It was cool, right? I liked looking at that in the data center among all those black, boring boxes. And we started to try things out with Google. We did a beta kind of test with the Drive connector back in 13. And Google did a case study on us, so you can still look that up today. But that was kind of a failure. It didn't work. We didn't use it after all that because I think Google was trying to figure out. They're like, okay, great, we're a cloud company. Why are we shipping boxes to people? And so throughout 13 to the further years, you can see the expansion that we did. We added stuff to the GSA, like searching your drive, searching our internal and external knowledge bases, searching video metadata from Sonic Foundry media site. We didn't search the videos, we searched the content around the video so you could find a video. We added an employee directory, and I think through there, Chad was with us all along.
I think I started with the autonomy work, actually.
Yeah.
Very far back, yeah.
Yeah, you sold us on that piece of junk, autonomy, I think.
Yeah.
Was that right? Okay, no. Sorry, autonomy, we love you. And we integrated then in 2014 GSA deeper and deeper into applications. So we started getting more and more complex. And I have a few slides to show you what that complexity looks like. But in 2016, we signed on with Google as a trusted tester for what would become Google Cloud Search. It used to be called Google Search for Work. And what did that do? That was a search box just for Google content, right? So you could search Drive and email and stuff. And that was great. That worked perfectly out of the box. There was no box because basically it was just a new app that Google gave you or that you paid for with your enterprise license. And in this last year, we became a trusted tester for Cloud Search, trying to look for that one search to rule them all, one search to find them, is to find all the content, no matter if it was in Google or if it was in our corporate repositories. So here's a little bit of a history here, and what I call the olden times, okay, in the 90s. I don't see anybody out there that was alive in the 90s, so you're just gonna have to trust me on this one here. This was our box, this was our search box on our website, and you can see some features I have listed there, like content repository selection and so forth. My favorite is browser copyright, right? 1996, Netscape Communications. We actually had that on our main website. We moved a few years after that into the autonomy age, and you can see the search box got better. It has more features. More features must be better, right? So we have all these selections, we have multiple languages, but we still had to have a user guide on our site to tell you how to use the search. Have you ever seen a Google search page user guide? Nope. So this was complicated, but you could drill down into it. Fast forward a couple more years into the search appliance, and you can see we now have multiple repository selections. We have metadata displaying, we have filters and facets, and we have all kinds of lovely stuff in here. And we have a source, I circled this over here for videos. You could technically find videos in this system. And then we had, the GSA used to have this text rendering. So back in those days, in the 2010, people didn't really have that great of internet. And so if you needed a 400-page PDF of a user guide, the GSA solution was to give it to you in text so you could get it when you were in a QAD office in Thailand or South Africa or some other kind of place without great internet. But that was the Google Search Appliance, and it was really successful.
And Scott, at this point,
yeah.
what content sources were you searching?
So in here, you can see our content sources of videos from MediaSite, learning from our learning management system, knowledgebase, forums, product updates, which were a website we built, and product documentation, which was yet another website we built.
And were you on Google by this point? You're getting
yeah,
close.
We went to Google in 2010,
Yep.
and throughout that whole history.
But you couldn't see your Google stuff in here yet.
No Google stuff.
Yeah, not on the Google search
No,
box.
you had to go into your email or whatever and search through that. So then, you're right, I won't show a picture of that, but with the cloud search, you could see your Google stuff. And we kind of quasi-integrated them together in this next screen. You can see that we took a little page from Google to make search look a little better, and we added a layer on top of it called the Twig Kit. It's a third-party UI tool, and so what it shows is facets and metadata, and was able to embed the Google search appliance results inside of our various applications. But this is confusing. Again, my journey here, the reason I'm talking to you is because people don't really want that. We built that, people ask for that. They don't really want 10 different places to go search. They want one search. And so what I'm going to show you today is Google Cloud Search that is searching both G Suite and QAD content. It's appliance free. I think it's gluten free and sugar free too. And it's got a mobile app. You get it for free. And although you can build custom UIs on it, we've started to build our custom UI at this point. We're not quite done, but I'm going to show it to you anyway because I like to live on the edge. So we'll have a live demo a little later to show you what this looks like. And on this page, this is the mobile app. This is the web app. And you can see the results are the same. And they go from the top one is our own repository, document library, sales resources, our own repository. Here's Google Groups, which we use for forums and so forth. So everything's all integrated together for your term. And if you're wondering about this term, this is an automotive manufacturing term that's super geeky and boring, but I thought I'd show it. So I think I'm going to continue here to tell you, okay, how did we get to this point of what I'm going to show you? We have 3 business considerations, and those 3 considerations are mirrored by the technical considerations that Chad will talk to you about, because there's always 2 sides to it, right? You can't just get Google Cloud Search and boom, you're done. You have to think about things. So we're going to look at what to search, who can see it, and what does it look like. Content is what you're going to search. And I just listed some types here that you need to think about. What do you have? You have articles and documents. What's the difference between an article and a document? Well, an article is like a web-based, web page kind of thing. It might scroll forever. You don't really know how big it is necessarily. A document is a PDF file or a Word file or something like that. Videos, emails, all this kind of normally non-searchable private stuff that you would think, well, we're going to separate that out. I'll search for my emails in Google. If you remember a few weeks ago, Google's Gmail became 15 years old. And what was its premise? It was a search-based email. That was the whole premise. It didn't even have any folders on the side like Microsoft had. Of course, they succumbed to pressure and put the folders in there, but you have to think about email and code and people and relationships, because when you search for stuff, people make the stuff. Who made that thing? I want to find out who knows about what I'm searching about, and maybe I can ask her a deeper question about that. So content is one of the main things that you need to think about. So after that, your content has to be secured, and the security is complex. The security for your search when you're using Google Cloud Search comes from the content. Google doesn't know who can see what inherently. You have to tell Google who can see what. And so there are creators of files and content. There are only viewers of files and content. There are editors. You have to determine what content is only for inside people and only or also for outside people. There's a middle ground, right? There are partners and vendors. They might be able to see things. So for your business, you have to think up what the rules are, essentially. Also, PII, you want to make sure that you're not revealing things so the GDPR police come after you. You have roles, reuse. You have to think about metadata and how the metadata is going to tell Google Cloud Search about your content. And then there are legal ramifications of that. But of course, the end user doesn't really care about all that. The end user cares about how does it look. And so these are the glittering gems, if you read my description, that the one search will allow you to find, my precious. Repositories are the vertical silos that your content are in. You saw some of those, like the knowledge base and the forums. You have to think about your content and how it fits into those buckets. How are you going to sort it, filter it? What's the meaning of the words that come back? What is the age of the content? are you going to do snippets or not? Those little bits of text that tell you what's in that link before you click on it. And I'll be honest with you, when you look at our snippets, you might snicker at our snippets because they don't really make any sense. Some of our content that I'll show you are like PDF files that have weird PDF file names. And it just comes back for the name. So what is the title of that document? How many results, the pagination, and do you really need user help? Well, if you notice in Cloud Search, if you've ever used it, who's used Cloud Search on your content here? Wow, only one or two, well, a few more. You'll notice that there is a little thing where you can click on a button and it'll say, how do I use Cloud Search? Because you can phrase things like, show me documents shared with me, or show me documents last month, or something like that. And the hope, and I believe what Google is going to do, is extend that kind of AI smartness to your own content so that you can find those gems. So I'm going to pass it back to Chad here, who's going to tell you how technically to do that.
All right.
Want me to go?
Thanks, Scott. So this was the rejected title for this session. I don't know why Google rejected it, but maybe for time. Just a little bit more background on, because I want to open up to questions at the end. So I just want you to know that my background is in implementing these enterprise search solutions. I've implemented hundreds of them. And I know not all of you are familiar with Cloud Search based on the hands. So I'll give you just a little bit of background on what Cloud Search is capable of. I'll give you a little bit of tips, tricks, pointers, just kind of key things to think about when implementing Cloud Search. But then if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate. We'll have a little bit of time at the end. So I'm going to follow the same three categories that Scott covered. And this is how I scope projects. I think in terms of these three pillars. I think in terms of what content do I need to index, how does it need to be secured, and what's it going to look like when we present it in the user interface. So the content acquisition is difficult. There are a lot of things to think about. There are a very wide variety of content sources that people ask if Cloud Search can search. And the answer is yes, but how? So we have to look at each system on a case-by-case basis. We have to look at how the application lets us retrieve the content. Let me kind of elaborate on that point. So some people ask, how does Cloud Search know about my content? So I've got a little illustration here of kind of where Cloud Search fits in the architecture here. Cloud Search is not a content management repository. It is not where the files are stored, but it does have to receive a copy of the files to index them. So if I'm indexing an on-premise file share, in Scott's case, we are indexing on-premise databases. We write software that will take that content, the metadata, the access control information, the PDF, everything, and pushes it up to Cloud Search. There is nothing in Cloud Search that ever reaches back into your network, reaches into your SaaS provider, and pulls content. It's deliberate. Anything that you want indexed must be pushed up to Cloud Search. And you can do that as frequently as you want. You can see that that's part of the challenge. How do I keep it fresh? How do I keep it current? I'm in Salesforce and I enter a new order, and then I forget where I saved the order and I want to search for it. Sometimes that happens in 30 or 45 seconds. So sometimes we have requirements that need to refresh the content very, very quickly within a minute or two. It's not that Cloud Search has any restriction on how frequently I can index it, but I'll just leave the point being that those traversal strategies are where that sausage is made, how that's done. One of our common deliverables and projects are what we call connectors. Connectors are software that can run either on-premise or in a cloud environment, anywhere that it has access to both ends. If you look at the drawing, we've got several different types of content sources described here. We have connectors that can crawl web pages. We have connectors that can select data out of a relational database. We have connectors that can pull documents and structured records from systems like ServiceNow, from Salesforce, from Jive, etc. What they're doing is brokered by some software that Google developed called the Cloud Search Software Development Kit. It's a convenience layer. The software development kit makes it easier for you and I to develop connectors. It makes it a little more standardized, and it handles some of that traversal strategy for us. It can handle things like helping us detect the difference between the things that I indexed yesterday. Maybe my system had 1,000 documents yesterday, and today it only has 999, and I need to remove one from the index. So the software development kit has code that helps us keep the index in sync and keep it fresh and current. In terms of the payload that we actually send to Cloud Search, I mentioned that you do have to send the document up to Cloud Search to be indexed. When Scott mentioned that we have to deal with security, that's part of the payload as well. Every single document that is sent to Cloud Search can include information that describes who is allowed to see it. When you run a search, you will not see things that you are not allowed to see. You won't get a link that you try to click on the link and it doesn't open. Permission denied, request access. But that means we have to know those rules. We have to know who's allowed to see everything. The other thing is called metadata. It's a overloaded term. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. There is common metadata that every system has. Those would be things like the title of the document, the last modified date, the URL, what to click on when I see it in a search result. But Cloud Search also allows us to load custom metadata. So if I'm loading cases in Salesforce, those cases might have categories, they might have departments, they might have which of Scott's products it's related to. Scott showed, actually, I think you will show in your in your demo. There's facets along the left-hand side that categorize the search, the results, the content. Those come from metadata. So when I work with you and we talk about your vision for your search results page, I have to know that you expect to be able to filter the content by ticket priority. You've got P1, P2, P3, and you want to be able to filter and show only the P1s. That's fabulous. I'm glad that you want to filter by the P1s, but I need to know that metadata about every piece of content that has a priority code. Cloud Search lets us design a schema that the content will conform to. That means that I have to think a little bit ahead of time about all those different ways that I want to filter the content, that I want to sort it, what I want to display on the search results page. Scott will show the title of the document or the article. It will show that snippet that he talked about, but it may also show additional pieces of metadata. It helps you confirm that a certain search result is the one that you wanted or the one you were looking for. So we're giving you context, we're giving you additional information. All of that comes back to indexing and making sure that we push that metadata into the index. So the second part of this is security. You'll notice there's a lot of overlap here. Security was involved in indexing. I have to index the security information, but there's a lot more going on with security. There's identities, there's usernames, there's what group am I a member of? Maybe I've restricted content to anyone who's part of a certain group. Oh wait, but we use Active Directory, and that group information is stored on-premise or in ADFS. So how does Cloud Search figure all this out? So Again, a small illustration of what's going on with identity in cloud search. To set the premise, I think we've already stated fairly clearly that cloud search honors security insofar as we index the security and support the identity management system. But it's an intrinsic part of the system. You cannot, at this time, run an anonymous search in cloud search. It's designed for things where you are authenticated or you have a known user. I will say that even with Scott's example, some of their search goes to the public web. Some of their search is exposed to anonymous visitors on the website. We can handle that. We're currently doing it by creating a web user in G Suite, and then Scott's running their queries under that web account. But it speaks to the inherent security in cloud search. It is. I had someone ask earlier this week if there was a way to turn off the security. Could I make it run faster by not authenticating all of the queries? And the short answer is no. It's mandatory, and it's for a reason. It's because it was built with security in mind and security first.
And that's the way, I would have to say, that's the way all services are going, is that, you log into almost everything. Yep. And the power of that is that it begins to know who you are. I mean, this is Google we're talking about, right? The eye of Sauron looking at you, knowing what's going on.
It's good.
That was, I love you, Google. But it really is a good thing for users, because basically if you just Google your whatever, it knows what restaurants you went to and here and there, and that's useful to you. So I think this is sort of the new age. It's the start of the new age of at the web, internally, out externally, is going to know who you are and kind of give you a much richer experience.
Absolutely.
So I wouldn't even want it turned off at this point, although when we first started, that was the question, right?
Yeah. In that metadata, one of the things that Google has that I haven't seen any other search providers offering is something called interaction data. Interaction data is a form of metadata that indicates users that have recently accessed certain content. It keeps track of the files that you've edited or viewed recently in things like Google Drive with third-party systems. If we have access to that stream of information, we can load interaction data, and that will affect the ranking and relevance. I was giving a demo last year at Next of the cloud search system and was expecting a certain search result to come up in a certain spot. And it turns out the previous time that I did the demo, I ran the search and then clicked on maybe result number 5 or 6 in the list and was expecting it to still be 5 or 6. But a few minutes later, it actually jumped up to position 2 because I had recently opened that document in Drive, and it kind of caught me off guard. But once I realized what was happening, it was actually pretty cool. So this is not something that's easy to do in a few minutes, but I'm going to use this term early binding and just kind of briefly explain what this means with respect to security. So we've set the premise that cloud search needs to know who everyone is that's running searches. It needs to know who can see each document. Scott uploads a document into their portal. He says that this can only be viewed by contractors and employees. It cannot be viewed by guests on the web. He has set this access control definition. Cloud search works by knowing all of that information ahead of time. If I have users that are part of a group and I've put permissions on a file, maybe I have a group called engineering, and you must be a member of the engineering group to see a certain document. I have to make sure that the document that's in the index says that it can be viewed by the engineering group. I have to tell Google that there is a group called engineering, and I have to tell Google who is in that group. Now, this gets more complicated if I don't use G Suite and I don't use Google Directory. So as part of our projects, we go through a one-way synchronization process using something like Google Cloud Directory Sync. Google Cloud Directory Sync is used for a lot of different reasons, migrations, integrations with G Suite. We often use it when our customer wants to implement Cloud Search, but is not on G Suite. We can take their users, their groups, their roles, their directory information, put a shadow copy of that in Google Cloud Identity, and then Cloud Search is happy. You can see this illustrated over here in the diagram. We have our content indexing that's happening at the top of the diagram. Underneath, I have this additional synchronization that's happening. I'm also pushing user and group information, and I'm pushing that ahead of time. That's what we call this early binding. There's another form called late binding, where it checks in real time to see what groups you're a member of and what documents you have permission to view. Google found that those systems tend to be much slower. They take longer to execute the search because at search time, it has to do a lot of extra work to figure out what you're allowed to see. With early binding, Google knows immediately what you can see and what you can't see. Search results are averaging about half a second, even with the round trip to the cloud. So we're getting extremely fast performance, even with secure search. The final section here, just like Scott's, was the user interface. So Cloud Search does come with an out-of-the-box user interface. Scott's going to show you both examples. He's going to show you the Cloud Search user interface that comes from Google. He's also going to show you that we can build custom interfaces using what's called the Query API. And there's so many more considerations when we start getting into building custom UIs. Where do I deliver it? Do I embed it into my website? Do I create a standalone app? Do I put a search box in the upper right-hand corner? Do I have facets down the left-hand side? Do I let people sort or do other sorts of filtering? What do I show? Do I just show the title and the snippet? Or do I show the title, the year, the category, the department? Those types of clues can help people feel more comfortable with the search results. We build these applications and can host them in a variety of different places. So I've illustrated 3 different scenarios here. I think it's fairly complete, but I'll kind of focus on these 3 scenarios. One of the most common scenarios that we have is that someone has an existing application. That application needs to show search results. That application is not going to direct the user to interact with Cloud Search directly. It's all going to be brokered through the application. This is very traditional client server that I'm describing. We're talking about something like a web application that has a search box. When the user types in their query and hits submit, it's going back to your application. And then the second box up there is your application making the queries to Cloud Search. This is great because you have total control over the query. You can make sure that the correct collection is being searched. You can make sure that the correct filters are being applied. I was speaking to someone yesterday who was not getting the results that they expected with certain queries. They have the opportunity in that service layer to adjust the user's query to make it better, to kind of help the user get the results that they need. I won't go into, there's a lot of different reasons why that might happen, but just understand that this is, you have complete and total control over the queries that are sent to Cloud Search. The second option is similar, but Cloud Search is a end user accessible API. It uses the OAuth 2 protocol, and it means that you and I, if we are logged into our Google account, we can query Cloud Search directly. I don't have to go through your application. I don't have to go through a service layer. I can query googleapis.com/cloud search, and I can hit the API directly. So Google created a very thin, very fast JavaScript-based UI called the Enterprise Search Widget. It was designed to be embedded into various scenarios, but not deeply embedded. It's not embedded in the server side. It all happens in the browser. If you load this search widget and watch your browser network connections, you'll see that the browser is actually formulating the search query to Cloud Search, making the request, and bringing back the response. It then renders the response, and we can control the rendering of that through the JavaScript framework. The third option is, because we can access Cloud Search directly, we can embed this in other modalities. We can embed this in mobile applications. Google has a Cloud Search mobile application for iOS and Android, and Scott is going to demonstrate that even everything that I have mentioned so far, the security, the connectors, the integrations with on-premise and off-premise content sources, all of this non-Google stuff, even the customers that are not on G Suite could use this UI if they purchase Cloud Search and have a mobile-ready application without any custom development. So at this point, I'm going to hand it back to Scott for demo.
All right, so we're going to go to the demo here, and this is the standard UI of Google Cloud Search. And if you're not familiar with it, it first comes up with your schedule. You see this is on my calendar, and I can, these are some documents I've looked at. So this is standard Google stuff. And if I search for a term, and I'm going to search for Kanban, which is a automotive manufacturing term, boom, I get search results right away. But what you'll not see unless you've integrated Cloud Search into your own repositories are these things. This thing here is not in Google Drive. It is in our what's called the document library. And I can click on that and it will bring up this PDF very, very quickly, okay? But here's something in Google Drive that I have access to. So all of these things are I have access to, and you can see, you can scroll down and you can see different types of things in this green lettering here. Now you might say, okay, that's great, that's like one page of stuff, but I can go and execute this search on my email. Okay, so here's some email, or I can go back to all, or I can drop down this more, and now I have these enterprise repositories, these places that I want to search ready for me. So if I know I want to find Kanban on the support knowledge base, I can see it over here. And Google currently gives me some percentages of search results. So I can say, well, show me Kanban fixes or whatever. And when I click on this particular element, it is now going off to our knowledge base. This is a very low-end knowledge base tool that absolutely very few people use, but here it is. And it finds that content quite efficiently. And I can see that this author made this particular article. And I might say, you know what? I like this article. I want to talk to that person. Well, I can very easily go back to Cloud Search. It brings up, because we're a Google customer, on here. Now, it'll show me all of the articles that he created, but I can go and say all here, and then I can get more goodness from Google. Here's his phone number. Sorry about that, Nitin. Don't call him. He'll be mad at me. Here's his Google Groups and some other kind of information about that person. So that's the regular Cloud Search UI. And what I can show you here is it's the same when you're on mobile. So over here is my mobile device, and you can see I have my various apps. These are my work apps over here, and I click on the Cloud Search button, and it shows me the same stuff. And in here, I can execute the same term. And just like that, it shows me the same results here. This is all live, running from our standard setup. And you can move, I can move across the top, and I can get those same repositories over here and see what is QAD forum for Kanban. So here's our forums over here. So that's all in your pocket, ready to go, anywhere you are. We absolutely did not have that before. But if we want to go and look at more detail, this is the custom UI. Now, I'll apologize in advance. We're still working on this UI. And shout out to my developers back at QAD for giving me at least something to demo. And you can see I've searched for nothing here, so it's just showing us a bunch of results. But I can search for the same tool or the same term, and it's going to show me the same results in a custom UI. But in this UI, if I drill down into the support knowledge base, now I have all these clickable facets down here to go and drill into. And I can say, well, I want to see in this catalog what I have for Kanban over here in this catalog. And you can see the facets change in here. So if I now go and execute the same search, here's the same person, I now have drilled down for this term in my knowledge base on the subject of Enterprise Edition EE by Nitin Joshi. So here is the same results in here. Now that's kind of geeky or whatever, but I can search for stuff like Hangouts. QAD is nope. Oh yeah, because I have to go over here, all. If I search for Hangouts in all, come on. I forgot to remove my facets. That's something you have to build in. So if I search for Hangouts here, a common user might want to do that and find out not only stuff in Drive, but we would find stuff in our knowledge base over here, as well as emails or on the web or whatever. So if I use a term such as automotive, I get all the results, but I can drill down in here as Chad was talking about, and these are results from our websites. And you can see the different websites over here, and I can actually drill down into our main website and get brochures in Chinese and things like that. But I wanted to bring this up because you see these ugly terms, right? These are PDF file names that we haven't sent over the appropriate data to Google to make them pretty. And that's what we're in right now. We're in the middle of that right now. So that's really it on the demo. I just wanted to show you where it's at. Today,
one of the differences with Google.com, you sort of expect that the Googlebot finds what it finds. It's just a head change to think of enterprise search. You are in charge of everything. You're in charge of the title. You're in charge of the content. So there's a lot of flexibility. You can send, you could send the wrong title. You could make up your own titles. But you know, to Scott's point, that's just something we have to think about, and we have to make sure that everything is in sync and as we want it to show up on the front end.
Exactly.
Yep.
So if we can go back to the slides.
I left it up there, Phil.
I'm sorry. Oh, you left it up here.
Cool.
We basically have, these are our contacts, and you've heard about us, and I think you want to announce this guy in the middle.
Yeah, so like I said, SADA, we are the North America Partner of the Year for Google Cloud Search. Michael and I are definitively the best in the business. I've been doing this for, like I said, many, many years, hundreds and hundreds of customers. Michael Orshan is my counterpart from SADA. We work hand in hand. We work with some of the largest companies in the world. If you have any questions at all about cloud search, what it can do, what it can't do, if we could help you, please do not hesitate to reach out. We would be honored to work with you and help you.